Hi, my name is Michael Clegg, and for a majority of my childhood, I was bedridden with life-threatening migraines. These migraines prevented me from eating or retaining fluids and required dozens of emergency room visits for life-sustaining IVs. The years of malnutrition and inability to exercise destroyed my immune system, leading to monthly strep throat and ear infections. Along the way, I developed eczema and 2 autoimmune skin conditions. One created blistering sores on my arms and legs for months at a time. The other, hives and rashes whenever I sweat. On top of all of this, I developed OCD and Tourette's syndrome, giving me repetitive involuntary nervous twitches and bizarre obsessive behavior. For every ailment that I once suffered, there was a medical doctor that told me there was no cure. Today, I stand before you 100% disease-free. Now, the next thing I'm about to tell you may sound hard to believe, but this is not here because I want your money. There is absolutely nothing to buy on my website. Below lies all of the knowledge that I used to build my body back from the brink of death. The principles that I now live by. A user's manual for your body. My life's work, 100% free. With the hopes that it will help others to create a body that is healthy, functional, and physically attractive. I have a big question for you. What is the meaning of life? I don't mean this in a philosophical sense or a religious one. I'm simply asking what occurs nonstop, every second, every minute, and every day of your entire life. Energy. Your cells use energy to keep you alive, to keep you moving, to power your brain. Energy is the driving force behind every decision you've ever made, behind every action you've ever completed, and every success you've ever had. Energy is your life. The more energy you have at your disposal, the greater your achievements can be. The less energy, well, you actually don't achieve anything at all, and can even fall into a state of disease. When you finally run out of energy, you die. Take a few seconds and think very carefully about what I say next. Your body is made of 37 trillion cells. Trillions of microscopic cells. All working perfectly together just to be you every second. Look at the skin on your hands. Look at the hair on your arms. Go to the mirror and look at your eyes. Those cells are you. A complex web of seemingly infinite physiological reactions. Those cells compose your bone and muscle. They pump blood through you every second. They even hold your memories. But above all, this system creates the very energy that is your life. The body manual is a set of principles. Principles one must follow in order to strengthen every aspect of their system. Rules and requirements needed by every one of your 37 trillion cells to create the energy that is you. Imagine a pyramid built of 6 foundations. The mind, the breath, hydration, sleep, nutrition, and mobility. Atop this pyramid lays health. The importance of each consecutive level is demonstrated quite simply. No mind, no life. No breath, dead within minutes. No water, dead within days. No sleep, dead within weeks. No food, dead within months. No mobility, dead within years. Beginning first at the bottom of the pyramid, then working your way up, you build a strong and resilient structure for health to rest on. Now, imagine a set of dominoes. On each domino, a different ailment. Most of these dominoes are not life-threatening. Acne, stomach upset, anxiety, fatigue, insomnia, rashes, weak immune system. But some of them are diabetes, heart attack, stroke, cancer. Now turn all of the dominoes face down. Randomly select a group of them. Your selection is your genetics. Line these dominoes up at random. Every moment the structure of the pyramid is not stable, you risk knocking down another domino. The mind. Valley Uprising is a movie about the history of rock climbers in Yosemite Valley. The movie begins in the 1950s with a group of trailblazing young climbers pushing the limits of human potential. One particular group, led by a man named Warren Harding, became the first to summit all 2,307 meters of one of Yosemite's tallest peaks, El Capitan. Looking back now, this effort hardly even resembles what we call rock climbing. Harding and his team used power tools to drill screws into the wall, then attached ropes and ladders to aid themselves. They would spend weeks at a time suspended thousands of feet above the ground, belaying down for extended rest. Beginning to end, it took them almost 2 full years to complete. This summit, however long, gained Harding worldwide recognition, a feat of physicality that seemed near impossible. Fast forward to June 3, 2017. A young climber named Alex Honnold climbs El Capitan in 3 hours and 56 minutes. More importantly, he does so without the aid of a single rope. Imagine going back 60 years to the moment Warren Harding completed El Capitan's first summit, telling him that 6 decades later, this feat would be done in under 4 hours by one man using only a pair of climbing shoes and a bag of chalk. What is the difference between Alex Honnold and Warren Harding? Belief. Alex grew up in a world where 6 decades worth of climbers had come and passed, all knowing that El Capitan had been climbed before. Each group moving the limit of perceived possibility closer to Alex's awe-inspiring free solo climb. What are your beliefs? Do those beliefs place limits on your potential? Or do those beliefs move you closer toward your goals? Are those beliefs self-limiting? Or are they self-freeing? Before you start making any adjustments to your lifestyle, you need to believe that change is possible. Meditation. All of us do things we wish we could do less of. We live reactively, hating ourselves for eating that extra piece of cake, for staying up too late for no reason, and for skipping our workouts. These decisions are often made in our mind by the winner of a tug of war between impulse and understanding. While you understand what choices move you closer to your goals, impulse is strong and can overwhelm even the most logical of reasons. The more chaotic the state of your mind, the more often the strength of impulse will overcome the reason of understanding. You come home after a terrible day at work. Your mind is overwhelmed with stress. Impulse leads you directly to the ice cream. A family member confronts you about something. Impulse leads you to lash out and say something you don't mean. After sleeping, you wake up and reflect on the previous day's decisions. Why did I do that? Impulse is the greatest enemy to our happiness. Meditation is the rock on which we sharpen our thoughts to cut through the chaos. There are many different types of meditation, and many resources and teachers to learn from. Each method may be better suited for different people. Here is one simple and easy to follow way. Sit upright in a chair, lay flat on your back, or sit cross-legged on a cushion. Close your eyes. Begin to allow the breath to find a soft, gentle rhythm. Focus only on this breath. As thoughts come into your mind, acknowledge them, let them pass, and refocus on the breath. Meditation need be no more complicated than this. At first, it will be difficult to retain focus for even one entire breath. Do not be disappointed in yourself. Disappointment adds to the chaos we are trying to silence. Instead, remember that each time you lose focus, then return to the breath, you are completing one rep. As you practice, your mind will become stronger at returning and retaining that focus. Then, when the chaos of your mind begins to elevate and impulsive thoughts surface, you have built the strength of your mind to keep focus on your understanding. You have created a layer of separation or delay in which to observe impulsivity. Try to commit to meditating 5 minutes every day. No more time than this is needed. The key is staying consistent for months and years. As you get better, on days that you have time, try to increase this to 10, 15, 20, even 60 minutes. The breath. Your entire life exists because of one single reaction: the breaking apart of two carbon molecules. We breathe in oxygen and use it in a complex process that breaks the bonds between carbon atoms. This reaction is the core around which your entire physiology is centered, the reason for the existence of your very life. It is your battery, and oxygen is its charger. A VO2 max is the maximum amount of oxygen the body can take up from the air to be used in creating energy. When you are first conceived, you are one single cell. At this point, your VO2 max is very low. As you grow, you are able to take up more oxygen and produce more energy. In the average person, VO2 max continues to raise until the early 20s. Then it plateaus. From here, it begins slowly declining, around 10% per decade, until, eventually, you die. As you approach your final decade, your maximum ability to produce energy can fall below what it takes to walk unassisted. You are now ridden to a wheelchair. Eventually, you will not even be strong enough to produce the energy required to breathe unassisted. You will then live on a ventilator. A graph of your VO2 max is a graph of your life's energy. It is a graph of your life. Now let's compare 3 lives. The first, someone born with a critical illness. The second, an average person. The third, an extremely healthy person. The critically ill person will never reach their full VO2 max potential. It will plateau early and soon after begin to decline rapidly. A premature death will follow. The average person's VO2 max will peak at 20, plateau, then decline until death. The extremely healthy person will have a VO2 max that peaks at 30. It will hold this plateau for longer, then steadily decline through old age. Imagine how different an average life is from a critically ill one. This difference is nothing but a difference in energy, the same as the difference between the average life and the healthy one. Is that not something worth fighting for? Think of all the energy you had as a teenager. would you not want to have that energy forever? How often do you spend all of your energy on work, with nothing left in the tank to do the things you want to do? Increase your breath, increase your battery, increase your life. Wim Hof. Wim Hof has been called superhuman. Holding 21 world records for temperature exposure, some of his greatest feats include being submerged in ice for almost 2 hours without his core body temperature changing, running a marathon in the Arctic Circle at negative 20 degrees Celsius wearing nothing but a pair of shorts, and climbing above Mount Everest's death zone to 22,000 feet of elevation with only a pair of shorts and some hiking boots. Wim Hof truly is the Iceman. But how is this possible? Is Wim some sort of genetic freak? Is this the beginning of the X-Men? No, sadly not. But fortunately, Wim's outer-worldly powers lay in one simple principle: the breath. When you think of the energy of your life, you likely think only of kinetic energy. This is the energy that makes things move. But for every carbon molecule you break, the energy produced is only around 40% kinetic. 60% is something you probably rarely even think about: heat energy. Let me say that again. 60% of your life's energy is not anything you've ever done, not anything you've ever said, not the blood being pumped through your veins or the movement of your lungs, but it is in fact your very temperature. This temperature is kept so closely monitored by the body that a change, in either direction, of even a few degrees can be deadly. When we are exposed to the cold, our body responds by processing fat. It breaks apart the carbon molecules, releases heat, and generates a rush of energy. This process is not enough to remain warm in ice for minutes, let alone hours. Wim, however, uses a special breathing technique. This technique supercharges his body with oxygen and removes CO2, giving him the ability to process more fat and release more energy. Removing CO2 increases the pH of his blood. When CO2 is in the blood, it creates a proton. Protons equal acidity. The pH scale goes from 1 to 14. 1 is the most acidic, it has more protons. 14 is the most basic, it has less protons. And water is neutral at 7. The human blood is slightly basic, around pH 7.4 in the healthy person. Wim's breathing method raises his blood pH to over 7.8, above what was previously believed to be fatal. This physiological state change turns off the pain receptors in his body, preventing him from feeling the cold. Then, through a series of complex processes triggered by the cold, his body dumps all of its adrenaline. This adrenaline turns fat metabolism to full throttle and creates near endless amounts of heat. While all of this sounds cool, how exactly does any of it benefit you? What Wim has done defies what the average person thinks is possible. More importantly, though, it is proven that the autonomic nervous system can be controlled by the conscious mind. Let me expand. The modern-day medical view of the body is that there exists within us a divide between our body and our mind, between our conscious and the unconscious processes of our physiology. This is something that we were all taught since we were young. The things that go on inside our bodies: sickness and disease, mental health problems, allergies and immune dysfunction, that they are outside of our control, that we are helpless to the function of our biology and not the other way around. Wim has shown this all wrong, proving that with his conscious mind, he can manipulate his immune system to resist a direct injection of endotoxin, that he can raise his adrenaline levels to higher than someone bungee jumping while sitting in bed, and that he can subject himself to unthinkable feats of temperature exposure. So how does he do this? Through a combination of breathing, meditation, and cold exposure. To start, acidic blood is a characteristic of almost every single state of disease. Wim's breathing method allows you to change the pH of your blood, moving you away from disease and towards health. Second, when the body is low on oxygen, it breaks apart carbohydrates to create energy. When it is high on oxygen, it uses fat. Breathe more, burn more fat. Third, when you are exercising, the lack of oxygen and buildup of CO2 creates the bad burnout feeling. Learning how to breathe properly prevents burnout, allowing you to exercise for longer and more intensely. Fourth, just as doing a bicep curl trains your arm muscle, cold exposure trains your ability to produce energy. It literally trains your life force. Imagine you could see in thermal. Two people stand before you. One with chronic illness, the other an Olympic athlete. Look at the ill person. See the patchy heat distribution, energy barely flowing to the ends of the limbs. A system that is energetically broken. Now look at the Olympic athlete. See the even heat distribution, energy flowing to the very tips of the fingers and toes. A system that is energetically thriving. Now take both people and put them in ice. Watch as the ill person's system erupts into chaos, as tissue begins to freeze and die, as the force of their life is nearly snuffed out by the cold. Watch as the Olympic athlete system revs up, as heat is delivered evenly to all the tissue of the body, as the thermal light of their life burns brighter when challenged by the cold. The body is an adaptation machine, becoming better suited to any environmental stressor placed on it. It adapts by creating enzymes. Enzymes are little workers in the body. Some enzymes do one job, others do many. For example, hemoglobin delivers oxygen through the blood to the cells. The more enzyme there is, the faster the job will be done. The amount of enzyme is determined by how often you need more of it than you have. An analogy. A company sells bracelets online. One person is needed to make the bracelet, one to package it, one to mail it, etc. The company gets an order for 10,000 bracelets due tomorrow. There are not enough workers to make that many bracelets. The order is not complete, and the company hires more workers. When you exercise, you hire more workers. These workers are enzymes, and this is called adaptation. The harder you work, or the larger the order, the more enzymes you will make. Living within the comforts of modern society, we are rarely exposed to the temperature extremes common to our ancestors. This means that we are low in some of the enzymes essential for our life. When we choose to subject ourselves to temperature extremes, hot or cold, the body begins to make heat and cold shock enzymes. These enzymes mediate the body's ability to create, disperse, and emit the very energy of life. Finally, the last and most important benefit of the cold regards inflammation. Inflammation is the body's response to damage. It is the physiological state of the body during healing. The process of inflammation is necessary inside the body, but excess inflammation means excess damage. We live in a society that is chronically inflamed, caused by a combination of behaviors that damage the body. drinking, smoking, unhealthy eating, improper sleep, lack of exercise, stress. When the body remains in a physiological state of inflammation for extended periods of time, it begins disrupting the balance of the system. Remember the domino analogy from before. Living in a state of inflammation for weeks will begin knocking down symptom dominoes. Acne, stomach pain, fatigue, muscle and joint soreness. Staying in this state of inflammation for years, or even decades, will make your body a breeding ground for chronic disease. Arthritis, heart disease, cancer, diabetes, and autoimmune conditions like MS and Crohn's disease. Just as you would ice a sprained ankle to reduce inflammation, cold exposure ices the body, decreasing the inflammation in your entire system. Now you may be thinking, that's great and all, but I'm not going swimming in ice water. Sorry. Well, the beautiful part is, you don't have to. Just as someone who lifts weights is not afraid of becoming a 300-pound bodybuilder, you should not be afraid of all of a sudden climbing Mount Everest with no shirt on. Remember, the body is an adaptation machine. It becomes resilient to cold temperature the more it is exposed. If you go through the uncomfortable beginnings, just like starting to exercise, eventually it will become an enjoyable experience. Start slow. Commit to ending your showers cold for 5 seconds. As you become adapted, progress to 10 seconds, 15 seconds, even a minute or more. Don't forget, though, that the pain receptors turn off when the blood pH has raised. Don't forget to do the breathing. How to breathe. When you breathe, you use 2 different sets of muscles, the diaphragm and your rib muscles. At rest, you should be breathing predominantly with your diaphragm. When you exercise, you should add the rib muscles to increase speed and depth. Our society is notorious for sitting too much with bad posture. You've heard the term sitting kills? When you sit hunched over, you prevent the proper use of your diaphragm. This leaves only the rib muscles and creates shallow breathing. Your lungs are a series of branching tubes with little balloons on the ends. The main place that the blood comes into contact with the air is at the surface of these balloons, at the very end of these tubes. The rest of the tubing is dead space. When you breathe deeply, you get fresh, high oxygen air into the balloons. When you breathe shallowly, you only move air in and out of the dead space. When you smoke, you cover this tubing with tar, preventing gas exchange. The longer you sit with improper posture, the longer you rehearse shallow breathing. This is the same as rehearsing a song on the piano. The more times it is repeated, the more natural it becomes. Repeating the motor movement and writing the song of your life. To help rewrite this song, begin by laying on your back. Place your left hand over your heart. Place your right hand over your stomach. Try to breathe using only the diaphragm, pushing the stomach out and raising the right hand as high as you can. Do not move your left hand. Imagine that your diaphragm goes from 0 to 100%. 0 being fully exhaled and 100 being fully inhaled. Try to breathe slowly from 0 to 100. As you get more comfortable controlling the diaphragm, start incorporating the upper chest. Breathe 100% into the diaphragm. Then breathe 100% into the upper chest. Exhale to 0, then repeat. This will rehearse the start of an inhale with the diaphragm, following it with accessory muscles. Once proper control of the diaphragm has been achieved, try Wim's breathing method. Simply take a quick, deep inhale, followed by a smooth, steady exhale to 50%. Seriously, that's it. In the lungs, the exchange of oxygen and CO2 occurs because of the difference in pressure between the blood and the air. Let's think of this on a scale from 1 to 10. 1 being the lowest oxygen, 10 being the highest. These are not real numbers, just used for an easy explanation. When the blood comes back to the lungs, it is low in oxygen. Let's say it's at a 3. When fresh air is in the lungs, it is high on oxygen. Let's say a 7. The difference between the two will determine how much oxygen is transferred. 7 minus 3 equals 4. Increasing the pressure of the oxygen in the lungs from 7 to 9 will create a larger difference in the pressure between the air and the blood. This means that more oxygen will be absorbed. 9 minus 3 equals 6. Having a clear nasal passage, or wide mouth, allows a fast inhale. This minimizes the time at low oxygen. Having a narrow mouth on the exhale increases the pressure in the lungs, maximizing the time at high pressure. The power of Wim's breathing method comes from this optimization of the breath, allowing anyone to supercharge their body with oxygen, allowing anyone to become superhuman. To learn more of Wim's techniques, check out his program online. But even if you don't, be sure to spend a large portion of time dedicated to training your breath, long before you even consider starting a workout program. Yes, it is tedious, and might feel as though it is not bringing you improvement. But dedicating yourself first to mastering the singular most important factor for your entire life will bring improvement much faster, allowing you, ultimately, to achieve much more. Hydration. You already know that drinking water is important, so drink more. A great way to start and end the day is by drinking 1 full glass of water. To test hydration levels, check your urine. It should be pale yellow in color. When you're exercising, sick, or recovering from an injury, drink more water than you think you need. Beyond that, think about the quality of the water you're drinking. Standard tap water can be better or worse depending where you live. Water treatment facilities filter and kill bacteria, but they also add chemicals like chlorine and fluoride. These chemicals are considered safe. Cigarettes were also considered to be safe for decades. Adding any chemical, in any amount, to your body will create an effect. These chemicals may be low enough concentration to not elicit a toxicity response, but there is no guarantee accumulation over decades has no effect on the body or the mind. A reverse osmosis water filtering system will remove all chemicals and impurities from the water. The system itself can be expensive, a couple $100 to $1,000. A budget-friendly option is buying refillable jugs of reverse osmosis filtered water. This can be as cheap as $100 a year. While the filtering system removes harmful compounds, it also removes trace elements like magnesium and calcium. You can remineralize the water, but if you eat a healthy diet, this should not be an issue. Sleep. Visualize the 37 trillion cells that compose your body. Imagine the unthinkable amount of reactions performed each day. Out of all of these reactions, how many errors occur? How many cells become damaged from inflammatory habits? How many of these cells are broken? Sleep is when the body repairs damaged cells. Sleep is 1/3 of your entire life. The magnitude and importance of this cannot be overlooked. The body requires 8 to 8.5 hours of sleep every single night. This amount is neither optional or negotiable. Every missed hour leaves the body with damaged cells. While one night will not kill you, compound this by a week, a month, a year, a decade. Even sleeping for 7 hours each night means 3,650 hours of missed repair by the end of one decade. Every missed repair decreases the efficiency of your entire 37 trillion cell system. This can lead to impaired immunity and sickness, cognition and memory problems, body fat retention, extended healing time for injuries or muscle post-workout, affected mental health, increased inflammation, and accelerated aging, among many others. Humans evolved as diurnal mammals on planet Earth, meaning we evolved to be awake at day and asleep at night. This day-night cycle creates a rhythm in the body called the circadian rhythm. This rhythm determines when the brain releases daytime chemicals and when it releases nighttime chemicals. When the sun rises, exposure to light increases and daytime chemicals are released. When the sun sets, light exposure decreases and nighttime chemicals are released. We now have artificially created light, confusing the brain to what time of day it is, making the body lose sync with the rhythm of the planet. The farther off the sync gets, the greater effect it has on our sleep. In Bolivia, there's a tribe of people called the Chimone. The Chimone are one of the last remaining hunter-gatherer populations. Researchers have flocked to the area to study the people, trying to figure out what is normal for us humans. When the researchers tried asking the Chimone about insomnia, they had no idea what they were talking about. They did not even have a word for it. Your body is so sensitive to light when you're sleeping that it can react to a laser beam being pointed at the back of the knee. An hour before bed, try to turn off cell phones, TVs, and bright lights. When you must, use dimmer switches or turn your phone on night shift. When you're sleeping, make sure that all light is off in the room. This includes clocks and radios. You can also use blackout curtains to prevent light from entering through the windows. Yes, you could be sleeping for 8 hours a night, but only a fraction of those hours could be spent under full repair mode. Removing all light and avoiding caffeine 8 hours before sleep will increase nighttime chemical release. This includes coffee, tea, pop, and pre-workouts. The closer your sleep aligns with the progression of the sun, the better. But the most important thing is to keep your sleep in rhythm from day to day. Try not to vary your sleep time. For example, perfect sleep would be from sunset at 10 p.m. to sunrise at 6 a.m. But a good sleep rhythm could be from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. or 12 a.m. to 8 a.m. To help fix sleep rhythm, try taking melatonin and magnesium 20 minutes before bed. Do this at the exact same time every night for 1 to 2 weeks. Nutrition. People eat too much, too often. The idea of constantly being fed from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, every single day of your life, is a 20th century idea. Humans evolved as hunter-gatherers, with periods of success and of failure, periods of food and of hunger. This means we evolved to have necessary functions that occur only during each of these physiological states. As a consequence of modern food technology, a hunger phobia has developed. Terrified of going hours without food, let alone days. Fasting is good for you. Allowing your body to go through the natural rhythm of fed and hungry is good for you. Each time the body fasts, it adapts to conserve energy. It becomes better at processing fats and regulating blood sugar, and begins to kill off and recycle old cells. This increases the efficiency of the entire system and has an anti-aging effect. Food is also inflammatory. Even healthy food can be slightly inflammatory. Going extended periods without food allows your body to lower inflammation. If you wish to attempt fasting, please consult a physician before doing so. Current research suggests fasting for 16 hours or more each day is best practice. This leaves an 8-hour window which can be taken at any time, preferably 2 or more hours away from sleep. For example, you could have your first meal at 8 a.m. and your last meal at 4 p.m. Or you could have your first meal at 2 p.m., your last meal at 10 p.m., then go to bed at 12 a.m. Just as we must rid ourselves of our hunger phobia, we must rid ourselves of the idea that breakfast is necessary. This is propaganda from cereal companies in the 50s that still has a grip on our society. If you like to eat early in the day, great. If you don't, great. Yes, your first meal of the day is important. It will dictate how blood sugar is regulated for the remainder of the day. But when you choose to have that meal is irrelevant. The most important thing is to maintain an 8-hour eating window. If this is new to you, begin slowly. Most people eat between the hours of 8 a.m. and 11 p.m. That is a 15-hour eating window. Try to narrow the gap. 15 minutes less each day for 4 weeks. Slowly moving toward the time you like eating best: breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Once you're in rhythm with 16-hour fasting, try attempting a 24, 36, or 48-hour fast, adding in these extended fasts a few times a month. The effect of black coffee and tea on fasting has not been extensively tested, but it is definitely better to have either than to not fast at all. Try to limit consumption to your 8-hour window and avoid during prolonged fasts. Remember, fasting decreases the total amount of stored micronutrients in the body. Be sure to eat healthy before and after fasts to stay nourished. In order to decrease body fat, fat must be processed by the body. Fasting teaches your body to process fats. When you try to lose weight through traditional dieting, you remain in a physiologically fed state. Your body will continue using carbohydrates as fuel instead of fats, defeating the purpose of the diet in the first place. Even if you do burn some fat, when you're in a fed state, your body does not reduce the amount of skin you have. This is why people lose weight and have excess loose skin. When you fast, the body goes into connective tissue turnover. This means it starts breaking down and removing excess skin. Fasting equals tighter skin. Gears, fuel, and storage. Your body is a storage facility for 2 different types of nutrients: micronutrients, vitamins and minerals, and macronutrients, carbohydrate, fat, and protein. Micronutrients are the gears for the system of the body. Just like gears, they wear out and need to be replaced. Imagine all of the storage containers for every vitamin and mineral your body needs. If the storage runs out, the efficiency of the entire system will suffer. Eating a wide variety of whole foods will help keep stores high, especially vegetables in an assortment of colors. Macronutrients are used for both fuel and building blocks by the body. They are stored in the liver, muscle, and fat tissue. The body's first choice fuel source is carbohydrate. The body will always use carbohydrate first when it is available. It produces energy the fastest and requires less oxygen, but it produces more CO2. Remember that CO2 creates acidity. About 500 grams can be stored in the body, creating 2,000 possible calories of energy. Second choice fuel source is fat. It produces energy slowly and requires more oxygen, but produces less CO2. The body has a near limitless ability to store fat, easily over 100,000 calories in an average person. Protein is generally used last. It cannot even directly be used for energy. Protein is made of amino acids, which are used as building blocks for enzymes. Remember, enzymes are the workers in the body. Once ingested, these amino acids remain in a pool within the body. The cells draw from this pool as they build. When we do not eat protein, this pool begins to deplete. Eventually, the body will begin to break down muscle, releasing amino acids to replenish the pool. When you eat protein, the pool is filled and muscle breakdown stops. Your body cannot store more protein than can fill the amino acid pool. Any excess protein is turned into carbohydrate by the liver, then used for energy. Putting any environmental stimulus on the body will cause it to adapt and become better suited to the environment. Lifting weights develops muscles. Cardio increases endurance. Yard work causes skin on the hands to become calloused. And hot and cold exposure makes the body better equipped to deal with those extremes. The enzymes in the body change in response to each stimulus. Just like every other stimulus, food is no different. The body will adapt to the time, type, and volume of food it is stimulated with. In humans' evolutionary past, large sources of carbohydrate were extremely rare. High carbohydrate plants were sparse, and things like honey were extremely difficult to acquire. The human palate evolved to obtain great pleasure from carbohydrate, encouraging its consumption whenever available. Fast forward to today. Modern agriculture and food processing have made carbohydrate abundant, but the body has not evolved to cope with this drastic change. Tempted endlessly by biology to consume more carbohydrate than needed, stimulating the body with excess, meal after meal, day after day, year after year. Each meal, carbohydrates rush into the bloodstream and raise blood sugar levels. The body responds to this by releasing insulin. Insulin tells the body to store carbohydrate. When carbohydrate storage is full, the remainder is turned to fat. Once insulin has removed the excess carbohydrate, blood sugar levels drop. The body must switch from storing carbohydrate to releasing it. This release raises the blood sugar levels back up, but switching takes time. During that time, the body has low blood sugar. Symptoms of fatigue and hunger arise, pushing the body to eat again and restart the blood sugar roller coaster. The larger the stimulus of carbohydrate, the greater the roller coaster peaks and valleys. After years of eating this way, the body becomes conditioned. It expects that carbohydrates will be eaten all day long, slowly becoming more inefficient at switching from carb storage to carb release, increasing carb storage as fat, and halting the production of fat processing machinery. Over time, this insulin resistance can develop into type 2 diabetes. Even a lean athlete that eats too many carbs can become diabetic. When carbohydrate is not eaten for even a few hours, the body begins going hypoglycemic. Blood sugar levels can drop to dangerously low levels and cause serious damage. This is like standing over a well and dying of thirst because you don't have a bucket. So how is this problem fixed? Remember, the body will adapt to the time, type, and volume of food it is stimulated with. Time. Fasting will retrain the body to regulate blood sugar and process fats. Working out fasted adds additional stimulus. Eating carbs post-workout will teach the body to store them in muscle tissue instead of turning them to fat. Type. Foods that contain carbohydrate have a glycemic index. The higher the glycemic index, the higher the blood sugar will get after ingestion. An example of this is comparing an orange to orange juice. The fiber in an orange slows digestion, and makes the blood sugar response lower. This means that it has a lower glycemic index than juice, which has no fiber. Every food has its own glycemic index. During meals, multiple different foods are eaten at once. The total blood sugar response from all combined foods is called the glycemic load. To reduce the glycemic load, add fat, protein, or fiber to a meal. By choosing foods with a lower glycemic index and meals with a lower glycemic load, the damage of high blood sugar is reduced. Volume. Very simple. Eat less, total carbohydrate, each day, replacing it calorically with more fat and protein. Reducing the number of carbs will be different for every individual. Do not just go cold turkey. Slowly adapt over time to reduced carbohydrate, switching from high to low glycemic index foods, adding fat and protein to meals to reduce the glycemic load, and gradually reducing total daily carbohydrate intake over the course of weeks to months. Slowly narrow your eating window to 8 hours a day, adding in prolonged fasts at random intervals. Try to work out fasted and eat a majority of your daily carbs post-workout. Every individual has different genetics and energy needs. Some may be able to function effortlessly off of low levels of carbohydrate right away. Others may not. How much carbohydrate one needs each day varies from person to person. However, generally, as a society, we eat much more carbohydrate than we need. Even athletes, like marathon runners who practice carb loading for years, then collapse before the finish line because their blood sugar is too low. Unable to conserve energy or access their fat stores. Dying in front of a well without a bucket. Through fat adaptation, the body has access to near endless energy. Keto. When fasting, the body's carbohydrate stores deplete. Still requiring carbs to function, the body must make them in the liver from protein or fat. This is inefficient. It reduces the amino acid pool and promotes the breakdown of muscle tissue. To safeguard muscle and increase energy, the body begins shifting from making carbohydrate to making ketones. Ketones are a source of energy derived from fat that also act as signaling molecules. They tell the body to switch from fed to unfed physiological states. Many of the benefits of fasting come from the signals ketones make in the body. Ketones have been shown to decrease inflammation, increase oxygen efficiency, turn on cellular recycling processes called autophagy and apoptosis, increase brain function, cognition, and memory, increase wound healing, starve cancer tumors that are fueled by carbohydrate, decrease heart disease risk, increase energy levels, prevent gout and kidney stones, increase fertility in women, increase testosterone in men, regulate hormone levels, improve eye function and vision, increase muscle mass, decrease LDL bad cholesterol, and increase HDL good cholesterol, reverse and cure type 2 diabetes. And finally, they have been shown to be neuroprotective, helping in epilepsy, ALS, MS, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, traumatic brain injury, autism, depression, anxiety, headaches, and narcolepsy, among many others. The longer the body is fasted, the more ketones it will create. Desired blood concentration of ketones is between 1.5 and 7 millimolars per liter. This can take between 1 to 5 days of fasting to achieve. The moment too many carbohydrates or protein are ingested, the body switches out of ketosis. The amount of carbohydrate or protein this takes is determined by genetics, training level, and fat content in the diet. While genetics cannot be chosen, increasing fitness levels, practicing fasting, and eating a high-fat diet will allow more carbohydrate and protein to be eaten while remaining in ketosis. Some athletes can even eat over 100 grams of carbs each day and stay ketotic. To boost blood ketone levels, consume supplement ketones, ketone salts, or MCT oil. Going keto is not something that you need to do permanently, unless you are using it to battle chronic disease. Genetically, a small minority of people aren't even able to do the diet for extended periods of time. A good macro breakdown for normal diet should be high fat, around 50%, high protein, around 30%, and low carb, around 20%. Any carbohydrate should come entirely from low glycemic index vegetables, consumed post-workout. When attempting keto, move to 80% fat, 15% protein, 5% carb. Now you may be thinking, that all sounds like it makes sense, but isn't eating that much fat bad for you? Animal fats are unhealthy, aren't they? Saturated fats cause heart disease? Cholesterol is bad? How can this diet possibly be good for you? Well, I'm sorry to break the news to you, but you have been misinformed by educational institutions, public industry, the medical community, and the government. This is not some sort of giant conspiracy, and the Illuminati are not coming for your children. Poorly run experiments from the 1950s and 60s led researchers at Harvard to make a false assumption that saturated fat and cholesterol causes heart disease. In reality, it is the combination of high glycemic index carbs and saturated fat that causes this disease, not saturated fat on its own. This false assumption led sugar and wheat corporations to invest large sums of money to prove that carbohydrate was safe and fat unhealthy. The source of this research funding skewed the body of research, creating a giant confirmation bias. While most studies were just bad science, epidemiological studies that do not prove causation, some of the studies have been proven intentionally fraudulent. This biased research base skewed the medical community's opinion on fat and solidified the idea into textbooks. The government and health organizations listened to the medical community. They created the food pyramid and suggested eating a diet rich in carbohydrates. As the decades passed, we have realized that this was nothing but bad science, that saturated fat and cholesterol are healthy and necessary in the diet. Carbohydrates are not only unnecessary, but inflammatory to the body when blood sugar levels raise too high, the actual cause of heart disease, diabetes, and many other ailments. Okay, that's a lot to take in. You may be thinking, but all those researchers couldn't possibly be wrong. Those science guys, they should know what they're doing, right? In the 1940s, the world believed a different dogma, that cardiovascular training was the only form of exercise good for you. This ideology promoted that strength training would make you inflexible. It would hurt your joints and cause injuries, that it would make you unathletic and mentally slow, and above all, that it would lead to a premature death. At the time, one of the #1 exercise physiologists in the world was Peter Karpovich. Karpovich was a professor at the best physical education institution in North America, Springfield College. It was here that Karpovich preached this cardiovascular dogma, his entire life's work and research based upon it. Springfield had strong ties to the YMCA, which was the largest fitness organization at the time. This allowed Karpovich's ideas to spread nationwide until a majority of people adopted his view. But not all. A man named Bob Hoffman rose to fame as the owner of York Barbell and founder of fitness magazines Muscular Health and Strength and Health. On April 4th, 1940, Hoffman scheduled an exhibition in the auditorium at Springfield College. Here, a group of strength athletes would perform in front of the students and faculty. Everyone at Springfield eagerly awaited the event, where Karpovich would finally get the chance to shut down these bodybuilders in person. During the show, the athletes demonstrated feats of strength like deadlifts and presses, awing the crowd with tricks like thumb-only handstands. Out of all the athletes, though, the true star was a man named John Grimmick, a professional bodybuilder who is currently Mr. America. When the show was over, Karpovich rose from his chair. In front of the entire auditorium, he asked Grimmick, "Can you scratch your back?" Confused, Grimmick began easily scratching all over his back with both hands. This was Karpovich's trump card. He was going to prove, in one question, that strength training made you inflexible. Now scrambling, he tried to come up with another question. Grimmick let a few moments pass. Then, he dropped down into the full splits. The crowd was in complete shock. Grimmick then stood up and asked the crowd, what was the farthest any athlete had ever broad jumped at Springfield? He then proceeded to outjump that number. As a grand finale, Grimmick picked up 2 dumbbells, and while holding them, he did a full standing backflip. At this point, there was no question left in anyone's mind. This cardiovascular dogma was wrong. Karpovich now had a decision to make. Would he refuse to see what was right in front of him? Would he stick to his ideologies for fear of looking like a fool? When the show was over, Karpovich went backstage. He admitted to Hoffman and the athletes that he was wrong. He then rededicated himself to studying strength training, and his research completely changed the way we still view the body today. It is time for our educational systems, our industries, our medical communities, and our governments to stand before us and admit that they have led us astray. Vegetarian/vegan. So saturated fat and cholesterol aren't bad for you. But animal fats, those are bad for you, aren't they? Red meat too. Gives you cancer, doesn't it? Unfortunately, again, not true. If you choose to eat vegetarian or vegan for ethical reasons, amazing. Factory farming is an abomination and a true karmic disaster for humankind. But talking about health and not ethics, eating vegetarian, and especially vegan, is neither the easiest or most optimal practice. Yes, vegetarian and vegan diets are much better for you than the standard American diet. Typically, when people switch into these diets, they feel amazing for the first few months to a year, eating less processed foods and more vegetables. But it is difficult, not impossible, to eat fully vegetarian or vegan and get all of the nutrition the body needs. These diets also have the potential to become high in carbohydrates. Typically, people tend not to eat the exact balance of whole foods and supplementation required. Over years, the body can experience a wide range of deficiencies. Iron, zinc, calcium, riboflavin, retinol, B12, and many other nutrients can become critically low. This is by no means saying that people should not eat these diets. But if you plan on eating this way, do not just casually do it. Research how to match your foods to get proper amino acid profiles. Get blood run before and during the diet to flag deficiencies. Avoid turning to high carbohydrate foods. And talk to people that are experienced in eating this way to gain insight. Now, this next part is probably going to sound even crazier than everything else. There is a large and constantly growing group of people that eat only meat, and they are perfectly healthy. One promoter of this diet is an orthopedic surgeon named Sean Baker. He is over 50 and holds multiple indoor rowing world records. This is not suggesting to eat this diet. Humans are omnivores and should eat a balance of meat and vegetables for optimal health. This is simply pointing out that unlike eating nothing but vegetables, eating only meat will cause no nutritional or performance deficiencies. When you eat meat, you are eating another living being. That living being is a system that has trillions of microscopic cells, just like you. Depending on where you live, where you shop, and what you buy exactly, you are eating animals that were raised very different. The overall health of the animal will determine the overall quality of the meat. Animals that were fed corn will be high in omega-6s. And most farmers pump their animals full of antibiotics. A weak animal leads to a low-quality meat. Chicken and turkey are much lower in nutrients when compared to red meat. But even red meat is low in some nutrients. For example, vitamin C. It is hypothesized that when you eat carbohydrates, they interfere with the absorption and the utilization of nutrients like vitamin C. This means you require more in the diet than if you ate only meat. So why do most people think that this is impossible and unhealthy? Again, we must look to misinformation. Over and over again, you will hear the words, "Studies show that people that eat red meat are more unhealthy." Yes, this is 100% true. But people who eat red meat are also more likely to smoke cigarettes, take drugs, eat processed food, eat more sugar, not listen to health advice, drive too fast. The list goes on. Special interest groups promote poorly done, biased, epidemiological studies. These work their way into the media and cause confusion for the general public. Just take a look at the documentary, What the Health? But first, Google the endless list of blog articles showing this entire movie is nothing but propaganda. If you wish to live an ethical, cruelty-free life, amazing. I commend you without the slightest hint of sarcasm. But know that to live on one of these diets is a lot of work, and it is simply not the healthiest option available to you. If you do decide to eat meat, what should you be looking for? Fat tissue in the animal will accumulate fat-soluble compounds over time. The more unhealthy the animal, the more fat-soluble toxins will be in its fat. When you go to the grocery store, you may not know how the meat you buy was raised. It is safer, but not necessary, to buy leaner meat most of the time. Find a local butcher you can trust to know the source of your meat, or check out companies that deliver sourced meat to your door monthly. Try to buy grass-fed, antibiotic and food coloring-free meat when you can afford it. Living on a budget, ask your butcher what the cheapest, fattiest, grass-fed meat they have available. Buy as much of this as you can afford, then buy the remainder as normal, leaner meat. Another option is buying a full cow, lamb, or bison at a farm auction. You will know exactly how the animal was raised and can ensure that it dies in a cruelty-free way, hiring a butcher and freezing for a year's worth of food. The last option is hunting your own meat. Wild animals are the strongest and healthiest animals. This means that they have the healthiest, most nutritious meat. Even the color of wild game is different, naturally much darker and richer. By allowing an animal to live free rather than in captivity, by only hunting the older males of a herd, and by giving those males a fair chance to escape and merciful death over being eaten alive, you are living under the same moral grounds humans did for thousands of years, and within the Earth's natural ecosystem. Fish. Humans have destroyed the world's natural ocean ecosystem, polluting it with toxins and trash, and overfishing so intensely that fish populations will be near extinction this century. Ocean-caught fish are generally very high in heavy metals, like mercury and other toxins. Farmed fish are fed fish food instead of seaweed. This means that they are low in omega-3s and high in inflammatory substances. If you eat fish, try going for non-farmed freshwater fish. Processed foods. If you cannot pronounce the name of an ingredient in the food you are eating, it is probably not good for you. Eat whole foods. Whatever diet you decide to follow, it is less relevant what macronutrient distribution you eat, and more important that you eat whole foods. When you shop, spend your time around the periphery of the store, preferably only in the meat and vegetable sections. Processed foods are made almost entirely of 4 major sources: sugar, corn, wheat, and milk. Sugar. In this entire program, the word sugar refers only to highly refined and processed carbohydrates. White granular sugar is the best example of this. Honestly, you don't even need to be told that sugar is bad for you. You already know. It is a substance that we all know is toxic, but that is so addictive we don't care. It is one of the largest causes for inflammation that we are exposed to in Western culture. Watch Sugar-Coated for more. Corn. Modern corn is hardly even food. It has been modified and selectively bred over decades to become some sort of weird freak crop. It is extremely high in omega-6s, which have been proven to increase almost all disease risks across the board. It is produced and refined in laboratories to give you industrial starches, dextrins, cyclodextrins, and maltodextrins. Corn sweeteners like corn syrup, dextrose, high fructose corn syrup, and crystalline fructose. Corn oil and animal feed products. No surprise, corn is inflammatory to the body. Watch Food Inc. for more. Wheat. Wheat, too, has been modified and selectively bred over decades. Designed for increased crop yield and pest resistance, not for increased nutrient density. Wheat is also naturally high in phytic acid and lectins. Phytic acid is an anti-nutrient that prevents the absorption of calcium, iron, and zinc. Lectins are plant compounds that are inflammatory to the body. This means the wheat plant is not only low in micronutrients, but that it blocks absorption from healthier foods and creates inflammation. Just before harvest, wheat is sprayed with glyphosate. Glyphosate is a pesticide that has been tested to have no effect on human cells, but its ingestion kills bacteria that live in the gut. When humans have a weak culture of gut bacteria, a syndrome called leaky gut occurs. This allows undigested proteins to slip into the bloodstream. When undigested protein enters the blood, the body thinks it's a foreign invader. The immune system targets the protein and creates antibodies. This is how a food allergy is developed. A food allergy, or intolerance, creates inflammation in the body. Inflammation equals damage. White processed flour is especially bad for you. Almost all of the few nutrients it still has left are taken from it to promote shelf life. It is processed with chemicals, then fortified with iron and folic acid, and sold as a health food. Whole wheat bread is also garbage. If you still wish to eat wheat, look for bakery fresh, rye, spelt, or Ezekiel bread. Watch Why Wheat for more. Milk. Modern milk is processed beyond belief. It is bleached and has most, if not all, of the healthy fat taken from it. Most people, but not all, lack the ability to even process lactose when they are adults. This undigested lactose leads to a food intolerance, which causes inflammation. Cheese and butter can be equally as processed, but they are composed of the healthy fats from the milk. Look for the most unprocessed cheese and butter options when available, and if you can afford it, buy grass-fed. If the cow eats corn, the fat in the milk will be high in omega-6s. Food intolerances. Food intolerance is a major source of inflammation. It ranges from minor sensitivities to full-blown anaphylaxis. Every individual reacts differently to foods. While most people show sensitivities to sugar, corn, wheat, and milk, some can even be sensitive to healthy foods. Ingesting intolerant foods will increase inflammation and begin to knock down symptom dominoes. To test personal food intolerances, get your blood run by private clinics that offer the service. If getting blood run is not an option, fast for 12 to 24 hours, then eat the food you wish to test. This is not a perfect practice, but for strong food intolerances, stomach upset and fatigue will likely follow post-ingestion. How to eat. All of this information can seem overwhelming to implement into real life. While everyone's schedule and personal preferences will be different, this system is designed to be the healthiest, tastiest, and most efficient way to remain nourished. 4 containers. If you fail to prepare, you are preparing to fail. Prep cooking is essential to eating healthy when living a busy life. The 4 containers system requires that at all times you have 4 large prep cooked containers of food. One with meat, one with starchy vegetables, one with green vegetables, and one with colored vegetables. Along with these containers, you can add avocado, butter, hummus, or cheese to your meals. Sporadically, you can add in nuts, seeds, or fruits, even mixing the 3 into a trail mix. This method will allow you to easily live 25% meat-based and 75% plant-based. It is high in micronutrients, proteins, and fats, and low in carbohydrates. But most importantly, by always being ready, you will never be caught unprepared. Choosing to take cheat meals when you want to, not when you have to. Meat. Pretty self-explanatory. Have a container with a prep-cooked source of protein. Roasts, steak, stewing beef, lamb chops, leg of lamb, liver, sausages, chicken breast, chicken thighs, ground chicken or turkey, the list goes on. Try avoiding the use of sauces containing sugar when cooking your meat. Stick to natural herbs, spices, garlic, and onions. Starchy vegetables. The best source of carbohydrate is starchy vegetables like regular and sweet potatoes, or the many different types of squash. If you wish to eat grains, use quinoa or couscous over rice. White rice has almost no nutritional value and a high glycemic index. Brown rice can be high in arsenic. Many different cooking methods are available, but try to add in a fat source like coconut butter, or oil. This will lower the glycemic load of the meal and increase fat in the diet. For example, oven-cooked sweet potatoes, adding in tons of olive oil, salt, pepper, rosemary, and chili powder. Vegetables. Your diet should consist mainly of non-starchy, low-carb vegetables. The first container should be full of green vegetables: asparagus, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, broccoli, kale, spinach, zucchini, bok choy, and beans. The second container should be filled with an assortment of colored vegetables: carrots, red cabbage, beets, bell peppers, eggplant, and tomatoes. The best practice is to vary which you eat and how you prepare them, raw or cooked. First, fry onions and garlic in tons of olive oil or coconut butter. Then add in different combinations of the above vegetables. Don't be afraid to add a ton of salt and spices. This makes eating large amounts of vegetables palatable and delicious. It adds plenty of micronutrients while increasing the fat content of your diet. Before starting to eat this way, remember, everyone is different. You need to find what works best for you. Keto. When eating keto, switch from 4 containers to 3. One with meat that is fried in oil or butter, and 2 with green vegetables. Remove starchy and colored vegetables, replacing them calorically with green vegetables and extra oil, butter, and avocado. Use more moderate amounts of hummus and cheese. Continue consuming nuts and seeds, but do not eat fruits. Buying higher quality meat can help you stick to the diet, giving better meals that don't seem like sacrifices. Bacteria. The body is a rainforest. The plants of this rainforest are human cells. They compose the majority of the biomass and make the structure in which everything lives. The animals that populate this ecosystem are bacteria. Approximately 75% of the cells that compose the body are bacterial cells. For the most part, these bacteria exist within the gut. Some reside in the mouth, and others the skin, eyes, or lungs. Just as a rainforest depends on healthy populations of animals to create balance, the body requires colonies of bacteria. These bacteria protect the body from hostile species and help to perform biological tasks, like food digestion and vitamin absorption. They even create building blocks for the neurotransmitters used by the brain. Neurotransmitters give the ability to feel things. Dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, epinephrine. Without building blocks, these cannot be made. Emotional irregularity, depression, anxiety, and other mood disorders can arise. In the gut lays something called the enteric nervous system. Also called the second brain, it is composed of 500 million nerve cells. Just as the eyes sense light and the ears sense sound, the enteric nervous system senses our gut. It receives chemical messages from the human and bacterial cells, then relays those messages to the brain to influence our behavior. This connection is called the gut-brain axis, directly linking the emotional and cognitive centers of the brain to intestinal function. How many times have you taken antibiotics in your life? How many times have you eaten meat laced with antibiotics? How many times have you ever thought about the ecosystem existing inside of you? So where do you start? First, do not be trigger happy with antibiotics. Use them only as a worst-case scenario. Second, avoid eating antibiotic-laced meats or pesticides that kill bacteria. This is a lot easier said than done, but even reducing consumption is beneficial. Third, eat things that have good bacteria in them, including kombucha, naturally fermented sauerkraut, miso, tempeh, kefir, pickles, or probiotic supplements. While the exact amount or type of bacteria to ingest is not known, and this likely varies from person to person, maybe one day there will be personalized bacterial supplements. For now, varying the sources you ingest is a safe bet. Above all, remember that anytime antibiotics enter your system, bacteria die and must be replaced. Finally, in order to cultivate a good probiotic environment, you need to cultivate a good prebiotic environment. Gut bacteria mainly eat fibrous plants. How many fibrous plants are in your diet? Specifically, bacteria are very good at eating resistant starches. These were common in roots that were eaten by our ancestors, but are now less common. To get resistant starches in the modern diet, cook then cool potatoes, or eat green, unripe bananas. Sugar and artificial sweeteners greatly disrupt bacterial cultures, increasing the numbers of unhealthy bacteria, like those that create cavities in your teeth, and promoting the growth of bacteria in the wrong places, like types of bacteria in the wrong part of the gut. If you do use a sweetener, stick to stevia. Supplements. By replacing or supplementing something that is lacking in the diet, you can raise deficient levels of nutrients back to normal. Getting blood run will flag deficiencies. If deficient, consume a variety of whole foods that are high in the needed nutrient. The natural balance of organic chemistry in whole foods makes them the best way to absorb micro and macronutrients. If after eating these foods, levels still remain low, turn to supplementation in the form of pills or powders. When you get your blood run, the doctor is only looking to see if levels fall outside of a normal range. What is considered normal for every individual may vary dramatically. While one person is fine sitting at the low end of normal, another could have negative health effects. Be sure to get a proper reading of your blood work done, not based on Western medical ranges. Some nutrients are no longer found in our modern foods. An example of this is omega-3s. If you cannot afford grass-fed meat or do not frequently eat wild-caught fish, you will need a supplement of omega-3s in your diet. Another use of supplementation is to raise levels above normal to receive a beneficial effect. Before turning to pills and powders, check to see if getting the desired spike in nutrients can come from a natural source. Sometimes this is harder to do. For example, it is much easier to boost your immune system by taking a vitamin C pill than it is to eat a ton of vitamin C-rich foods. And it is much easier to take a scoop of protein powder than to have prep-cooked meat with you. Always go for the whole food option when you can. Many generic brand supplements are not even composed of what is advertised on the label. Be sure to go with trusted brands, especially when they are more expensive. Some recommended daily supplements are hydrolyzed collagen powder from grass-fed cows. This strengthens the skin, muscle, tendons, and gut lining. Broccoli and Brussels sprout powder, high in minerals and sulforaphane, a natural anti-inflammatory. Omega-3s, which are low in modern foods. Probiotics, when a natural source is unavailable. And MCT oil, which is turned into ketones by the body. On occasion, use things like protein powder when you don't have access to meat. BCAAs, to support extended fasting or heavy exercise. Vitamin C, for immune support. Vitamin D, if you live in a cold climate. Ketone salts, magnesium, and melatonin. Drugs. In human physiology, there are over 1 million natural chemical reactions. Of these reactions, only around 250 can be directly targeted by the entire pharmacopoeia. This means that only 0.025% of human physiology can be directly affected by every drug that has ever existed. While the pharmacological industry claims it fully understands the consequences drugs have on the body, their understanding is a pebble on the beach that is human physiology. Most pharmaceutical drugs are completely unnecessary and even dangerous. Tragically, some are even legally prescribed to children. Most drugs target only symptoms. They reduce things like acne, nausea, depression, rashes, and high blood pressure by suppressing them. These drugs have absolutely no effect on what is actually causing these symptoms. This is not to say that every single drug is bad. A drug is a tool. When used correctly, tools are very effective. But when used incorrectly, they can have serious consequences. Our society has become accustomed to the idea of a magic pill that will take away all of their problems. This ideology makes people easy prey for capitalist enterprises that sell quick fixes to make profits. The true answer to 99% of health problems is the body manual, through it creating a strong system of over 1 million physiological reactions. Not throwing a pebble on a beach and thinking it's a solution. Some ailments, unquestionably, require modern pharmacological help. But before taking pharmaceutical drugs, be sure to exhaust all natural alternatives and research the potential consequences for or against. Supplement industry. Much of what the supplement industry claims to be supplements are in fact drugs, especially pre-workouts and fat burners. These cocktails of artificially created compounds are drugs in every sense of the word. Only having existed for a couple decades at most, they have never been tested for long-term safety. Taking these drugs is simply rolling the pharmacological dice. If you are too tired to work out, or are unable to motivate yourself to exercise without the aid of these stimulants, you need to start at the bottom of the pyramid and work your way up. Fatigue and laziness are symptoms of physiological burnout. Adding stimulants will exacerbate this problem. A healthy body will desire rest when needed and movement without aid when functioning properly. Listen to your system. Mobility. I'm so busy. Work has been a lot. I'm getting older. We blame low energy states on things we cannot control. We justify sedentary lifestyles. The body is designed to move. The healthier it is, the more movement it craves. Starting with mind, breath, hydration, sleep, and nutrition, you will have a strong foundation on which to build the 3 pillars of mobility: range of motion, exercise condition, and coordination. Range of motion. To be functionally mobile, every joint in the body must have full range of motion. If you don't use it, you lose it. Stretch. When a joint is not regularly taken through its full motion, it slowly loses that range. Over time, each joint in the body becomes casted. This happens so slowly you don't even notice it. Then decades later, have unexplained joint problems. Back and neck that are out of place. Knees and ankles that ache. Sciatica. Shoulder impingement. The list goes on. If the body's range of motion is not maintained, it will be lost. Move each joint to its limit in every direction at least once a day. This can be as simple as raising the arms above the head, then touching the toes once. Try to commit to at least 1 hour of stretching each week. And for every hour of exercise completed, a minimum of 15 minutes of stretching should be done. This can be in any form, but yoga has specific advantages over other programs. Focusing on the breath and meditation while stretching helps to bring a calm and healing like nothing else. A feeling of physical presence where the mind and body connect, allowing you to sense tightness, pain, and discomfort. In both the body and the mind, you become the self-directed healer of your system. If yoga isn't your thing, don't let that stop you from having proper mobility. There are thousands of free stretching systems online. Find one that works for you. Exercise condition. When a company isn't getting orders, it lays people off. When the body is not stimulated to produce energy, it begins decreasing enzymes. It begins to fire the very workers that make your life's energy. The very workers that make your life. Move. Anywhere, anytime, anyhow. Just move. Train your system to be the very best energy creator it can be. A strong workforce of enzymes that burn bright with energy. Any form of exercise is good exercise, but the best type of exercise is the kind you actually do. Try different things to see what sticks. For some, it might be group classes or a personal trainer. Others, solo runs. Many people enjoy playing sports, and most cities have rec organizations that you can join. Just do something that you can stick to. Whatever exercise type you choose, do not neglect the most important thing of all: the breath. Your body uses oxygen like a currency in the body, spending it to create energy. When exercise demand exceeds this oxygen currency, your body must borrow energy from other systems. This process is called oxygen debt. Borrowed energy must be paid back. And every moment it is not, it collects interest. Interest taxes the body, leaving metabolites that can prevent healing and recovery. Imagine an artificially intelligent, human-like machine. If this machine requires oxygen to charge its battery and was tasked to produce as much energy as possible, it would not miss a breath. While you are exercising, focus on optimizing your breath, breathing in rhythm with whatever motion you are performing. Be sure to replace oxygen during rest periods and load up before and after you exercise. Oxygen loading. Begin by doing any cyclical movement. Keep a slow pace. The purpose of this is not to burn oxygen, but to promote blood flow. Find a rhythm between the cyclical movement of your body and the tempo of your breath. Breathe optimally. A quick inhale through the mouth, followed by a slow, smooth exhale, all in perfect rhythm with the body's movement. Continue this for 5 minutes. Coordination. As essential as range of motion and exercise condition are to mobility, neither would be of any use without coordination. Movement requires a series of perfectly timed nervous system reactions. The better timed the reactions, the more coordinated the resulting movement is. Sports train coordination, but most adults do exercise that requires only simple movement patterns. Some examples of other coordination practices are yoga, martial arts, gymnastics, dancing, Olympic weightlifting, or rock climbing. Find one that works for you. Program template. For perfect optimization, the body needs only 4 hours of activity each week. No more. As long as you are consistent and do not miss hours, you will go further than you ever thought possible. 1 hour of upper body strength training, 1 hour of lower body strength training, 2 15-minute sessions of high-intensity interval training, or HIIT, 1 hour of stretching, and 30 minutes of coordination work. Strength training will increase muscle mass and decrease fat. It will raise your metabolism, harden your bone, and most importantly, make you stronger. HIIT will push your system to the limit, stimulating every single enzyme in your body that produces energy. It will also increase your VO2 max more than going for longer, slower-paced cardio sessions. 1 hour of stretching and 30 minutes of coordination is essential but very commonly overlooked. Remember, your mobility comes down to 3 things: range of motion, exercise condition, and coordination. Do not neglect any. When training upper body, begin with a 5-minute oxygen load. Then, focus on 2 major movements: push and pull. Superset 1 exercise for each in the first 25 minutes. Next, do 15 minutes of abdominals, superset with any shoulder exercise. Follow this with 10 minutes of arms, supersetting biceps and triceps, and finish with a 5-minute oxygen load. When training lower body, begin with an oxygen load. Then focus on 1 major lift for the first 15 minutes. This can be a deadlift, back or front squat, leg press, or hex bar. Next, for 15 minutes, superset a quad and hamstring exercise. Follow this with 15 minutes of calves and glutes and finish with an oxygen load. For stretching and coordination, many programs can be found online for free. Do not forget to integrate the breath into your movements. This is only a template. Every individual has different needs. Some may need to focus on 4 hours of stretching to start. Others may need lower intensity cardio, and many will need breath work. Some will choose to do extra upper body work, or things like plyometrics for explosiveness. Everyone will be different. Identify what your goals are, identify what your weaknesses are, and develop a program around that. Life is nothing but energy, all produced by one single reaction. This reaction occurs each moment in over 37 trillion cells that compose the body, an interconnected web of physiology that must be maintained entirely by you. The body manual is a set of principles. Principles one must follow in order to strengthen every aspect of this system. Rules and requirements needed by each one of your 37 trillion cells to create the energy that is you. Now that you have the manual, it is time to decide what kind of owner you plan to be.